Hello, welcome back. Today I have a bit of a monstrosity of a video to go over, which you may be able to tell just from the title of this video. But basically I like the idea that people do where it's like, here's like the end of the year's number, so I'm going to read that many books in the year. So I want to talk about my plans regarding that and how it's actually going to end up being more than 22 books for 2022. But you know, whatever. So, first off, they just barely announced the Goodreads Reader's Choice Awards, and there are a few of those that I want to pick up. I haven't actually read any of them that ended up being the winners in any of the categories, although I did have some of the finalists that I'd read throughout the year. But several of them were ones that were on my list that I wanted to read, just in general. So there's that, and then there's a few looking at what won that I'm like, I kind of want to pick that up. So, starting there, the very first one would be from their horror category, which was the Final Girl Support Group, which has been on my TBR basically all year, other than that I haven't ever actually put it on hold at the library, but every time it like comes up in someone else's video, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to read that one. So, that one's my number one, and especially after reading paperbacks from Howl, I'm thinking that one will be a really fun one because it's the same author. And then next up on their list, they had the Memoir Autobiography category, which had the book Crying in H Mart on it, and that one I already have on hold from the library, so probably won't get to it till 2022 either way, but potentially I could technically get it since it's already on hold. And I just love memoir. If you've watched a lot of my videos, you probably know this about me. So I'm excited to read the memoir finalist, even though I didn't know it was the finalist, or the winner, I guess not technically just a finalist, when I put it on hold. Then, in their YA ones, I'm curious about The Firekeeper's Daughter and Rule of Wolves. One is fiction, one is fantasy, but just from the titles, which is all I know about them, they both sound like they're probably technically fantasy, and that there just ends up being so many YA books that it was like, we're just gonna split it into two categories so we can have two winners, or that's what that feels like to me. But obviously, not having read either The Firekeeper's Daughter or Rule of Wolves, I won't know until I do it, but they're both kind of on my list as ones that sounded interesting. Also, for the romance category, I've been reading more romance lately, so I kind of want to pick up People We Meet on Vacation. I've heard mostly good things about that one. And then also in the middle grade category, there was Rick Riordan's Daughter of the Deep. I did try to read Percy Jackson at one point and didn't get more than like a chapter into it, but I would be willing to give him another try because he's later in his career, so I'm sure his writing has gotten better than it was at the start of the Percy Jackson stuff. So that's the stuff I want to do from the Goodreads Choice Awards. That's like 5-ish books, depending on how that goes. So yeah, about 5-ish already planned. But then I've also got some stacks in front of me that you can probably already see that are my real big true goal that I've been thinking about for a long, long time for what I want to do for 2022. So it's something that I've probably mentioned on the channel before, but Diana Wynne Jones is my favorite author, and I own a bunch of her books. Not quite the whole thing, so some of them I will have to get either from the library or purchasing, which is not a big deal because I love all her books. Some of them obviously not as much as others if I don't own them yet, but having like the complete collection would be really cool too. It's sad that it can be a complete collection since she did die a few years back, but on the other hand, it makes it easier to finally be like, okay, we can just have a complete collection. So let's look at the ones that I do have, and then maybe talk briefly about some of the others, but probably not, because I don't know all the titles. I know a few of them that I don't have are like her short story collections. She's got a little bit of nonfiction. Her newest one that was completed by her sister, I don't own yet, and then a few of the more like middle grade ones, like Aunt Maria, Archer's Goon, and those types I don't really own yet. So those ones we'll have to source out copies of. But for the ones that I do have, let's just hop into it. First up, since it's first on the stack, we have Earwig and the Witch. I have read this before. I actually don't really remember what it's about, so it'll be fun to revisit. I know they also made a Studio Ghibli film that a lot of people don't really like for this one. but I don't really remember any of it, so we'll jump into this at some point, and it'll be a lot of fun, hopefully. And then next up, we've got Deep Secret, which this one's more of like a modern book, but then it has like fantasy elements. I believe the general concept is they're at like a hotel or a convention, and then a magical world starts spilling over into it or something. It's been a while since I read this one too. It's not one of like the top tier ones for me, but it's a fun one. So we'll hop into that one and reread that one too. Next up that I've got here is The Dark Lord of Dirkholm and The Year of the Griffin. These are some of my favorites. These are some of the ones that I read very first of Diana Wynne Jones's books. They're not the absolute first, but I read them very early on when I was discovering Diana Wynne Jones, and I feel like they still really hold up. The general conceit here is that there's this pilgrim party thing that goes on every year, and someone gets chosen to be the Dark Lord, and Dirk is the one who gets chosen in this one, and lots of hijinks ensue. There's demons and silly magical stuff in this one. And then this one, Dirk has Griffin children. That's part of Dirk's story, and they magic them to look darker and eviler when he's the Dark Lord. But one of his Griffin children goes to college, is what this one is. So they're both really fun. I love these ones. I'm very excited for the reread of these two. Let's see, where do we want to go next? Oh, this one's a good one to go to. Next up is Hex Wood. This one I'm actually going to be reading with my writing group for the month of January. We sometimes do a little book club, and one of them had started reading this in December, and then it was like, oh, we should do a book club. We all love Diana Wynne Jones, and me in particular am super excited because I have never done a book club discussion of any Diana Wynne Jones books, and this one in particular should be really fun. It's a semi-fantasy, semi-sci-fi. There's a magical wood kind of storyline, and I don't remember the whole plot, but I'm sure it'll be fun to revisit. So I'm excited to for sure get to this one in January. And then the next one that I have right here is Enchanted Glass. This, I believe, is part of her Ingery books, which, if you've read, like, Howl's Moving Castle and stuff, starts there, but then you've got a bunch of side novels that go with it, and I believe this is one of those. I don't entirely remember the plot of this one, because it's, again, been a while, but it'll be a fun one to revisit. I'll probably reread the Ingery ones in order, so I'm not showing this in order, because I didn't prep that well, but this is one of those. And then next we have 4 books, because I've got the Dalemark Quartet in these beautiful omnibus editions. So you've got Cartenswider and Durand Amit for the first 2, and then the second 2 are the Spellcoats and the Crown of Dalemark. What I remember of these stories is Cartenswider features like a traveling folks kind of family who go around doing musical shows. Durand Amit features another part of their country about a boy who's like an orphan or scrounging on the streets, something like that. The Spellcoats is like a historical back in time from the other stories in it, but then it ties in to everything that concludes in the Crown of Dalemark, where all the characters that we've previously met kind of tie in together. So this will be a fun reread. I haven't reread these ones in a while either, so that'll be a fun adventure, I think. Next up, we can talk about A Tale of Time City. I don't remember this one super well either. You can maybe guess from the fact that it's a library copy that I bought instead of a nice copy on my own. That this one was not one that I was as fond of. I don't really remember the plot of this one other than obviously there's some time travel stuff going on because it's Time City. But I look forward to it anyways. It should be a fun adventure to revisit. I do really love all of her books. It's just some of them stick with me more than others. That's just life, right? Okay, so next up we've got some more omnibus editions. These are my books of, well, I always pronounce it chestromancy, but I know that there's a pronunciation in it that it's technically crestomancy, but when I was reading these as a kid, I have mild dyslexia where sometimes for names of things I'll switch letters around, so he's just always going to be chestromancy to me. So apologies for mispronouncing that. But you've got volume 1, which my family bought for me, I'm pretty sure just for the cat on the cover, because I was a big cat person as a kid. But the first one contains Charmed Life and the Lives of Christopher Chant. And then the second one, which also has a cat on the cover, is The Magicians of Caprona and Witch Week. And then the third volume, which I've got an edition that does have a cat on it but doesn't match the artwork of the others, so I'm really sad about that, but I feel like that's maybe just how these books went. But this has Conrad's Fate and the Pinhole Egg, and yeah, so general conceits with these is Crestomancy is a magician who kind of rules over a multiverse of universes, of magical universes, and he goes and fixes magical problems throughout them. So all of these different stories are different things where he intervenes. The Christopher Chant one is the Chestomancy who's featured most frequently through these books. So they do all kind of tie in that way, but they're also very much standalone stories if you just read a description and want to read one just for that particular story. So they're very fun that way. I love them. They're a great series. And then we get into the other Inquiry books that I've got. Again, they were not together, I don't know, but Howl's Moving Castle, Castle in the Sky, Castle in the Air, which I always think is Castle in the Sky because of the Ghibli film, and then House of Many Ways. These two feature most heavily with Sophie and Howl, but all of the Inquiry books do reference it. The House of Many Ways in particular, I read somewhat recently, and I was surprised to get the references because I'd forgotten they were in this one. But yeah, they're all very fun. Lots of silly magical hijinks going on in these ones. I don't really want to spoil them. Also, Howl's Moving Castle has a movie, which is not super accurate to it, but I assume people have at least some degree of familiarity based on that. So, again, as with many of her books for those ones too, they are essentially standalones, but they do have those repeating characters. So, that's one of those fun things. And now for the ones that I have that are my top favorite Diana Wynne Jones books. We have The 8 Days of Luke, which I actually got as like a secondhand copy that my family had to find at a secondhand bookstore for me. But this one talks all about like Nordic myth and stuff, and it's really fun. I really super love this one. Also, if you know me recently, it's got a snake on the cover, so that fits my current aesthetic really well too. But the story itself is really fun. I love the way it goes into it. It covers 8 days of time, and they meet like one of the Norse gods on each of those days, which if you know how their naming works, they match to the days that they're named after. It's really fun. I love it. It's super great if you can find a copy, but I know it's been out of print for a while because I got this years ago and it was a secondhand copy at that time. So I'm really lucky to have it. I'm really glad I have it. And finally, my most favorite Diana Wynne Jones book of all the Diana Wynne Jones books, and that would be Fire and Hemlock. I feel like I've talked about this on the channel already probably, but this is just my favorite book. I love it so much. It's my comfortable, familiar friend. I usually read it at least once a year anyways, so I'm looking forward to it. I'm actually currently in a reread right now for this year. But yeah, I love this book so much. It's my good, comfortable, familiar friend, and yeah, I have bits of it memorized, and it's a favorite. So I'm very excited to for sure be planning on reading this one next year too. But yeah, that's my list. There are, again, a few other Diana Wynne Jones that I did not feature here because I don't own them, but I'm going to try to read through every Diana Wynne Jones book. I think it'll total out to I have to read like 4 or 5 a month to actually get through her whole collection, but it'll also depend on if I can find her whole collection. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's my plans, and I'm very excited for them. I might also do like a tier ranking type thing for the Diana Wynne Jones books, like at the end of the year, because I love the tier ranking stuff, but we'll see. Let me know if you've read any of these and have any opinions or interest in any of them too, if you have any plans from the Goodreads Reader's Choice Awards books. And yeah, I think that's all I got for now. This is the Uma Harper signing out.